Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Last Saturday, Games Workshop announced that Blackstone Fortress was coming to an end. They said later in the year we're going to get an expansion called Ascension, and then that is it. The narrative is complete. And I've already posted a video about that, but since posting that video, I've seen several times, several people asking questions like, oh, if the game's coming to an end, is it too late to get involved, or should I still get involved, or I was thinking of buying this game, maybe now I shouldn't. So I wanted to post a really quick video, just talking about that really. Before we begin, it's worth noting two things. First of all, I am not associated with Games Workshop in any way. I don't work for them, I don't have any insider knowledge, they've never sent me any products to review or anything, so I don't have any insider information, and anything I say in this video is just my own thoughts and opinions, and who knows for sure what the future may bring. The second thing is, obviously, due to the current global situation, Games Workshop are on lockdown, which means at this moment in time, you cannot go into a Games Workshop store and purchase products, although they are starting to reopen certain stores in certain territories based on government guidelines. That excludes the US and the UK at the moment, but obviously that's changing all the time, and I don't know what the current situation is going to be by the time this video is uploaded. However, it's also not possible to order online, or their warehouses are shut down, and also third-party companies that sell Games Workshop products may not be able to get product in order to fulfill orders either. So it's a very unusual time for getting hold of things, and you will find in a lot of places some of these Blackstone Fortress products are showing as unavailable or no stock, and that might start people thinking that it's already gone, the game's already dead. However, in a lot of cases that's entirely down to the fact that the supply chain is not currently active. But let's pretend for a moment that the world is normal and not completely broken. And let's just go over a few points about the end of Blackstone Fortress, what it means, and whether you should still consider getting involved. The first point, and this is an important point, is we're not done yet. They have announced that the Blackstone Fortress narrative is going to be coming to an end after the Ascension expansion. Ascension expansion is the culmination of the story that they wanted to tell. But that expansion isn't out yet. Not only is it not out yet, but the expansion that was coming out before it, Deadly Alliance, which has the Zote in it, also hasn't come out yet. Deadly Alliance was pushed back because of the lockdown, so it could be a little while before we get that, and unless they're going to release two expansions simultaneously, we can assume that Ascension is going to be happening later on again, perhaps after the summer, maybe even towards the end of the year. We don't know exactly what the timescales are that we're looking at and how the lockdown is going to affect their distribution chain and those publication dates. So we still have two more expansions planned at this moment in time. It's not like they've just said, this game is now dead, that's it. This game is going to be concluded later in the year, so we're not there yet. They've also been publishing content in White Dwarf magazine every single month for quite some time now, and that's probably likely to continue. It's likely to continue because, like I say, we haven't reached the end of Blackstone Fortress yet. There are still two expansions to come out, but also White Dwarf magazine is written months in advance, so they're going to have generated content for magazines that are coming out over the next 3 months, and there's a good chance that all of those magazines are going to have Blackstone Fortress content in as well. And finally, at the end of 2019, they released an annual which compiled all of the 2019 White Dwarf content. There is a possibility that they will do the same thing again in 2020 at the end of the year. They may decide that if the game line is already finished by then, they may decide that an annual isn't going to sell so well, so might not bother. But it's a fair assumption, I think, that we will get a 2020 annual. So all things considered, I think we can basically look at 2020 as still being full of support for Blackstone Fortress, with two expansions, White Dwarf content, maybe an annual. I think there's still quite a few releases to come. It's not like we're already dead in the water. That being said, it's worth bearing in mind that Games Workshop don't mess about when it comes to dropping games or terminating support for games. Games Workshop, more than any other company, puts out content at an incredible rate. Under normal circumstances, they have new product coming out every single weekend, and they can't keep all of that product in circulation all of the time, and the priority is always going to be their core product lines of 40k, Age of Sigmar, and Lord of the Rings. So they are quite ruthless when it comes to finishing support for a product, and they are very good at knowing when sales for a product have peaked and when they're in that stage of the law of diminishing returns and they want to cut the strings and move on to a new product. So that is something to be aware of. Already, some of the card packs that they published for Blackstone Fortress, that's Abominable Intellect, Advanced Arsenal, and Deadly Peril. I think that's what they're called. I can never remember the names properly. But those card packs are already out of print and are pretty difficult to find now. And I think now that we've seen an announcement for the end of the product line, other expansions are going to start going out of circulation now as well. Don't expect any reprints of the base game or expansions. I think we're looking at whatever is out there is whatever there will be. I'm particularly concerned about the last expansion, Ascension. They are releasing it after an announcement that they are finishing Blackstone Fortress. There is a possibility that they will be very conservative in the numbers that they produce for that final expansion. I would recommend, if you want it, pre-ordering it. I'm going to pre-order it because I think it's going to be one of those expansions that blink and you miss it. That's a personal assumption. Obviously, I don't know for sure. But I'm going to be pre-ordering it. I've pre-ordered everything for Blackstone Fortress anyway, but I'm going to definitely be pre-ordering Ascension because I am concerned that it won't have the same kind of stock levels as expansions that they were producing at a time when people thought the game was potentially going on for years more. What that means to somebody new to the game system, somebody deciding whether they want to get involved now at this point, they may have to move quickly. They may have to buy the base game and perhaps all of the expansions, if not all in one go, but maybe within a few months. And all told, that means 6 boxed expansions. And they're not cheap expansions, they're quite expensive expansions. So there's quite a potential investment and upfront amount of purchasing that you will need to do, unless you're only interested in the base game. And I will say that the base game alone is good fun. It's a really good base game. It's got a lot of content in there, a lot of good miniatures, a good narrative for the game, and you will have fun with it. But obviously expansions add layers, add more variety, add new enemies, new adventures, new heroes, and just expand the narrative. So, the expansions do help. They do add to the overall value proposition of the product line. So that is something to keep in mind, something to be aware of. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, Games Workshop have said this is the end of Blackstone Fortress. They have not said it is the end of Warhammer Quest as a product line. Blackstone Fortress is actually the 3rd Quest game in the new series of Quest. There was Silver Tower, then Shadows over Hammerhall, then Blackstone Fortress. Of course, Silver Tower and Shadows were both set in the Age of Sigmar setting, whereas Blackstone Fortress is set in the universe of 40k. It is my belief that there will be another Quest game, and I personally think it's going to be another 40k game, and furthermore, I think it's going to use the same basic core system. That's the thing that would make most sense to me. I feel like Blackstone Fortress has been successful for Games Workshop. I think people are sad to be seeing the end of it. So I think it would make sense for Games Workshop to, at this point, refresh the product line. Once you've got a base game, 6 boxed expansions, 2 years worth of White Dwarf content, somebody coming to that game now is going to look at that and say, well, that's a lot of stuff to get, perhaps a lot of stuff that I've already missed. So at some point it makes sense to have a new starter set, a new box set, and I think that's what we're going to get. We're going to get a new Warhammer Quest starter set in a new setting with new heroes and new enemies, but using the same core system. And again, I must stress, I do not know that for certain. I do not have any insider information. This is just me and my assumptions. But I think that's what we will get. There is, of course, a possibility that they may decide to revisit Age of Sigmar. Silver Tower and Shadows over Hammerhal did not get a lot of support. Blackstone Fortress obviously did. They have learned some things, I think, over the course of Blackstone Fortress, and they may want to take some of those core mechanisms from Blackstone Fortress and use them to create another Age of Sigmar based game. Perhaps give 40k a break for a couple of years, and then take the quest line back to 40k again. I think that's less likely. I think they're going to stick with 40k. But either way, whether it's an Age of Sigmar game or a 40k game, I personally believe we will be getting another Warhammer Quest, and it will be, if not the same core system, an iteration of the same core system, much as Hammerhal was an iteration and a slight improvement over Silver Tower. And I think Blackstone Fortress content, if it's going to be a 40k setting, will be compatible, but it will create a new in for new players. So it may be the case, if people have looked at Blackstone Fortress and thought, I really like the look of that game, but it's been going for a while now, I'm not sure I can get the expansions, that's, it's a lot to deal with. Maybe if a new Warhammer Quest is coming out, that might be the best place to start, rather than trying to dive into Blackstone Fortress now. But of course that is a bit of a gamble. If Games Workshop decide that they're not going to make another Quest game, you've missed out, and that's a decision that everybody has to make for themselves. And if I had a functioning crystal ball, it would be a marvellous thing indeed. If people are considering still getting involved with Blackstone Fortress at this moment, I think the important things to remember are just the base game is good, but if you're going to get expansions really help. Escalation is probably the essential expansion. The Dreaded Amble and Traitor Command are small box expansions which add a few enemies and add a side mission and a few other bits and pieces, and they are good, but they are not on the same level as Escalation. Escalation will bring you more enemies, it will bring you more heroes, more ships, more game tiles. Furthermore, Escalation is an essential purchase for any subsequent expansion. If you want No Respite, Deadly Alliance, or Ascension, you need to have Escalation. So if you only get one expansion, get Escalation. If you can't get Escalation for whatever reason, any subsequent expansion from that point onwards isn't going to be accessible to you. So that's something to remember. Overall, do I think it's still a good time to jump into Blackstone Fortress, knowing that it is about to come to an end? Like I say, I don't think it's the end of Warhammer Quest. I just think it's the end of this particular story, and we're going to be enjoying more stories in different settings for years to come. The game itself is one of my favourite games. I mean, I wouldn't cover it as much on my channel as I do if that wasn't the case. So yes, I rate it as a good game. I think if you're someone who wants every single expansion for it, it's something that you need to think about carefully. The 3 card expansions are already unavailable. The other expansions may become very hard to find very quickly. But that's the situation as it stands, really. I don't think this is the end. I think this is just this end. It's a new beginning, perhaps. I think getting involved in the game system now requires some careful consideration. There are a lot of things to think about, and you need to know in yourself whether you would be happy not getting everything for the game if that became a possibility. And you need to think whether you might be better off just waiting for a new starter set, and then if it turns out that the Blackstone Fortress stuff is compatible with that new starter set, picking up some of the previous expansions if you have an opportunity to do so, if it's actually relevant and makes sense to do that. We're a little bit up in the air. But these are just my thoughts. I have no idea whether this video is going to be helpful to anybody. I've tried to cover every single point that could make an impact on someone's purchasing decision, but ultimately I cannot make those purchasing decisions for anybody. And buyer beware, I guess. These are uncertain times. But that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you've enjoyed the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you've really enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.